This is the online version. Now noted there is a live version. I don't have it with me today, but it's just a box and it has the cards with it and the timer and all the post-it notes. So this game actually is designed to be played around a table, eye to eye. And yet, because of the way the world's changing, our designers here through the Maxwell team have provided this online, which we're looking at today. So just keep in mind for those watching that there is a live version that works really well. And if you get people around the table, it really does help the dynamic. And this is the way that you can do it without having to be in a room together if there are certain things going on like COVID, or if it's just easier if your team's in different places in the world, even you could use this version. And so I've called this demo. We've added 6 players. You can do between 6 and 12 players, up to 12. After 12, kind of the length that we want to keep it to, which is basically 90 minutes. It kind of pushes that boundary quite a bit. So we keep it between 6 and 12 players. Today, we've simply added a supervisor and 5 employees of that supervisor. And as we play the game, these are the different categories of cards that will be rolling and uncovering. The cards here deal with the organization, with leadership, with how we live as followers, with how we're leading ourselves, which is personal leadership. The gold card is just a way you're seeing someone else contribute on the team, and you can be encouraging by sharing how you think that person is stepping out in sacrifice or things like that, and you can award those gold cards to your peers. And then the trigger card, which is the card we have to wait a little bit to play, because once that one is kind of built off of previous discussions, and so it can't really come up quite for the first 5 rolls, but after that we can use the blue card as well. I just want to note, Mike, that if you decide to use this with any of your trainings, that the cards are interchangeable. So if there were certain questions that you wanted at the top of the pack for your people to discuss, or whoever you're working with, that we can definitely rearrange those in any order, as you can see, and that would be set for the gameplay according to your team. But if there aren't any other questions, I'd really like to just explore this as we go through it. And if you have further questions, then you can ask them at that time. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to leave everything set then. We're going to save it, and then we're going to start the game. The things to remember, a couple of things. Most of this will be discovered as the game goes on, but just remember that points will be received throughout the game. You can give points peer-to-peer, or I can award points as the facilitator. Also, a talkative team member can be silenced for 3 minutes just for fun. So if you have especially talkative people, there can be each team member can put a quiet card on that person for a little bit so that others can have a chance to discuss. There will be some discussions in pairs, and when those happen, we'll move into breakout rooms, and I will put people in randomly in breakout rooms for those. And then again, the blue card is based on previous conversation that's already happened, so we won't get to those right away. And so that's kind of a lot, but I just want to clarify a few of those things before we start. And so, Mike, you and I are going to just pretend that we've got this team here. I'm going to be facilitating. You'll be the supervisor, and let's just see what kind of cards come up, and let you ask questions as you have them throughout this gameplay. As you can see over here, everybody's listed. It's starting with the supervisor. And what we'll do first is we'll simply roll the dice and see what we get. And again, we play for 90 minutes with a team. You and I are just going to do a few cards here to give you the idea. But we would play for 90 minutes, and then we would close with a final card that everyone around the table would answer. So we got a leader card, and what would happen at this point is, Mike, I would open the card and I would let you read this. So your job, Mike, would be to, as the first person in the game, would be to read this top portion, because that tells the team how they're going to function together, how they're going to actually tackle this idea, and then you can read what the card wants us to do. So I'm just going to have you practice that. If you could, just go ahead and read the card for me.
So I read the card out loud?
Yes, please.
Okay. The law of design: to maximize growth, develop strategies. Life is very simple, but keeping it that way is very difficult. What do you intentionally do to prioritize your daily activities?
And so this question, as you can see up here at the top, it tells us how we're going to tackle this question, because we mix it up with different ways. Sometimes we debate, Sometimes we do this in pairs. Sometimes it's a group discussion. But this one says we're going to use our sticky notepad to record our personal answer to the statement. So each person would have a notepad at their desk, wherever they were on the screen. And I would have them, or you would have them, take that pad and jot down their own answer to that question. And once they had 60 seconds to do that, we'll come back and talk about that. And they would just share what did they do intentionally to prioritize their daily activities. And it would just give a little bit of insight around the circle as to how each person does that. And so once the card was read a couple of times, I would come back to this view and I could start this timer, which is going to be hard for us to see. I'm going to try to move this box. I would start the timer, and then they would have 60 seconds to think about this question and write down the ways they prioritize. Once the time was up, we would call it, and they would share around the circle. And so, Mike, just to humor me, I'm going to be taking notes throughout the game. What might be a way that you would prioritize, or what do you intentionally do to daily prioritize your activities? If you could give me an answer, since you were the one in the game that rolled this one.
So I keep a digital checklist using the Trello app. And at the end of each day, I look at what I've completed that day, and the things that were not completed that day are moved to the next day. So the first thing I do is look at that to see what is left remaining from the previous day. That does not mean that it has to be the top priority, but it is work that needs to be done. Then I think about my current projects and where I'm at on each of those current projects, and decide whether the work from yesterday needs to come before or after the ongoing project work that I am involved with.
Wonderful. As you can see with each player, what I'll do while they're talking, and as each player shares, I'll note their name. Since today we just have you and I'm not going to put your name, but I would name, and then I would make the notes, and those notes would go into a report that's going to come back to you. So you're going to be able to recall everything that everyone contributed and said for each question. And I'll just hit next player. It'll turn this card over. It'll save those notes. And then we will go ahead and roll the dice for employee number 1 over here. Now, if someone said something during that discussion that either I liked as the facilitator, or that you liked as the supervisor, or that one of the employees liked about what was said, each one has those cards that they can award points to. So we're going to keep reiterating that and keep that in mind as we go around. But if you were to want to award it, you would just say, I would like to award employee 2 with a peer card, because I could learn something from what they're doing with their day. So then you would, I would allocate that to employee number 2, and then they would receive those points. And so you just awarded as their supervisor some points for something they said that you liked. And that would give them some encouragement, but also just help exchange communication that I learned something from you. And that's what you can do throughout the game. So you only have, 2 cards to award. So through this particular, through the online version, you could do that 2 times, and you just kind of keep your ear open to when you want to award those.
Okay, that's good to know. I got another question.
Absolutely.
So when they were writing down stuff on a sticky note during the 60 seconds, that is a physical sticky note that they have there on site.
Yes, I would send those ahead of time and make sure that everybody had what they needed to play with all the tools. So I would do that as your facilitator. I would make sure that I either had the company do that for them, or I would go ahead and send those as a part of this process in the price package, so that they could have everything that they needed.
Okay, that's good.
Now, the sticky note is more usable in the room, but it's still just a way for them to go inward and write it down. So we would still use it in the process. They wouldn't hold it up or put it on a board like they would if we were together in a room, but it still gives them that personal dynamic of writing it down. So I would go ahead and have them do that.
All right, I like it. That's good.
Okay. And so employee number 1 would be up next, and we would have the dice rolled, and this would be a personal leadership question. And I would allow employee number 1 to read that. And so employee number one would read the top, share your response to the following question or statement with the rest of the team. So this would just be not writing it down. You would just have to speak it out to the team.
Okay.
We would go around the table, around the screen. The law of reflection, learning to pause, allows growth to catch up with you. Describe how and how often you intentionally stop to reflect on your actions and experiences. And so around the table, everyone involved would go ahead and share how they intentionally stop and reflect. This comes from the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, Chapter 4. If the leader, for instance, wants to follow up, you're going to get a copy of who answered this, and you know where it comes from too. So if you want to actually follow up with a mastermind discussion, or if this elicited some really unusual content that you want to follow up with your employees, you could actually get that chapter and you could read it together and talk about it. So that's why it shows where it comes from. So we would give every person in this round a chance to answer that question out loud. They would just take turns as they wanted to, unless no one was talking. And then as the facilitator, I would say, Julie, why don't you go ahead and start and let us know how you do this? And then we would get the ball rolling if no one was willing to speak up first. And again, down here, I would type Julie, and then I would just take some notes on how she pauses and reflects on her day. Driving home, I assess my actions and reactions and reset my attitude for the following day. So then I would record that for each player, and I would keep adding those notes, next player until it was time, and then employee 3 would be next, or employee 2 rather.
Okay.
So is it making sense so far? And are there any other questions at this point?
Wow, just observation that whoever the scribe is has a lot of work to do and really has to be able to focus well.
Yeah, that's for sure. And again, as the leader, you're listening as well. I'm taking the best notes that I can, but as that report gets back to you within 48 hours, you're probably going to be it'll be pretty easy to even remember from my scratches what maybe more in depth was said, because these are people that you care about, that and you're going to be listening as well. So the report I give will generate a lot of feedback. It won't be a perfect record, but it will give jog your memory enough to be able to help follow up if there was anything that you wanted to follow up with. So
that's good.
Let's see if we can get another color to come up. Okay, this is a follower's card.
Okay.
Also, Mike, what I would do is once the card is read, if there was a group discussion, I would actually stop sharing the screen, and I'll put all the faces of everyone back up. So it's a little bit better.
I like it. Yeah.
Just staring at the card and having these little pictures on the side.
Okay.
So why don't you take this turn, and let's pretend you're employee number 2 and take a turn here.
Players pair up to discuss the following question or statement. Write your response. Then one player from each pair reports to the rest of the team. Here's the prompt. The best leaders are listeners. Which group of people feel like they are not being listened to and deserve more attention? So answers could include employees, clients, customers, shareholders, ambassadors, etc.
And for this card, we're going to go into a breakout room. But what I would have your people do is I would just have them take their phone out, perhaps snap that card, because when you go into breakout room, you're going to need to see it again. And I would want them to have their phones there for that reason. But I would go ahead and have you read it twice and then have them click a picture of it. And then we would this is a little tricky, but then I would just close this. And then I would just I would stop the share. I would go ahead and put people into the breakout rooms.
Okay.
And I would just have them automatically assigned. And if you wanted them assigned ahead, we could talk ahead. I could assign them ahead of time if you wanted certain people together, because really typically they'll share with the same person throughout. Because if you're in a room around a table, it's just natural to stick with the same person. And so this way, if you wanted certain people together, we could do that, or I could just randomly put them in a room and they would just stay with that person. So I would do the breakout rooms. They would have their timer. Once we were ready to come back, I would send them a message. They would see that it's time to come back. They would re-enter, and then we would go right back to the game and talk about that question. But only one person would be reporting.
Okay.
If you remember, it said that one person would share what that discussion was about. I would probably give them a few minutes on this, more than 60 seconds. I would probably give 4 to 5 minutes to see if they could really come up with who they really think is not being listened to, so that the team could then talk about that and find ways to make that group feel more listened to and included for the company's sake.
So that is an additional benefit to this game, is there will be some troubleshooting of different issues, such as this issue, that might result in some good information.
I've seen a few cases where an actual solution was given that was going to be then used. And it doesn't happen every time. But yeah, you're correct. Sometimes you can solve a problem while playing this game because it simply has been overlooked in the busyness of the whirlwind. And sometimes these questions hit a real good need. And it does lift up real-time issues while you go through it as well. So that is correct. It
like that.
Real helpful in that way. And so as the people shared, and I would just get a few of them to share, then I would record.
So would you record like the names of the two people and then what was reported in that group? Or
I might try to, but I would at least get the name of the one talking, so that if Jim was sharing for his group, he might say, like, for instance, the supplies or the supply chain being stretched and need so we would just kind of list that maybe the supply chain is getting harassed for everything that people need, but they're not being listened to as far as what. So that might be more of a manufacturing question that just popped in my mind. But I would just record what each one did, said there, so it would go into the report. Once we got everybody recorded there, we might even say, "Oh, I'm so glad to know that." Maybe employee 2 liked what employee 3 said, so they could allocate points. And again, throughout the game, people are just giving points to one another. And that's how the game actually comes down to the end. And you say, okay, who won per se, and it's encouraging. It can give the feel of some people aren't quite as, being quite as encouraged as others. But I feel that when I've played it before, the many times that I've done this with different companies here, is that pretty much everybody gets at least a point or two. And I try to watch as a facilitator to award people who haven't gotten any. I'll try to really draw out something that they gave and make that a point to encourage them. But there's no prize at the end. So it is kind of just for, just to say, hey, I got the most points, and we're not giving anybody a special award. So it does allow for a little bit of differentiation, but that also helps the leader to see, again, who's really coming up with, who's really staying in there, who's really thinking, who's really trying to bring, like you said, solutions and build trust in the team. It gives the leader a little bit of insight there as to who others are looking to and what they see.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
And then as a supervisor, I've got these to allocate. I can give great new idea, awesome edification. If someone, really encouraged another player, then I could encourage them for being an edifier.
I like that.
Someone's really transparent, which usually happens in the game. You have 1 or 2 cards that come up and people are so transparent, and it's just like, wow, that was really helpful, because it not only is amazing help to the team, but it gives others that permission as well to be transparent. Or if someone in this case gave an action step of how we could listen better, a wonderful action step or an insight. So those are the ones that I can hand out as the as the facilitator. If you're willing, we'll just try to roll until we get these other colors so you can see one example of what they are. Here's a
Okay.
good roll. This would be, I don't think I hit next player, so we'll use this one. It's going to make me roll black again since I switched.
Okay.
Okay, we've gotten through, let's say we're on our fifth person. So let's say we got the blue card. This one has to be based on something that was previously. So employee number 4 would say, share your response to the following question or statement with the team. So in this card, the person who drew it can either share or they can pick someone else to share, but only one person's going to share. So let's say employee 4 didn't like this and they said, I really would like to hear what employee 2 would say about this question. How has this exercise so far affected your thoughts on leadership? And then that person would just take what's already been discussed and draw out something that's helped affect their thoughts on leadership. So they would share what they think based on leadership this game has done so far to help them or affect them. So that it would just be a one person share though, and then you would move on. So keep the pace of the game moving, but give someone a chance to reflect on what's been spoken and give their own thought about it. So that's what a trigger card does. I would record, I realize leadership is more personal than previously. So maybe they discovered that they need to be leading themselves more than just expecting leadership to happen is what I meant by that comment. But I would probably clarify it a little bit better once I went back and looked at the report. It'll come to my email and then I'll just say, okay, that doesn't make sense, but I remember, that. So I would clarify it before I send it on to you if the words didn't make sense there. Or as the leader of the team, you could say, could you also add this? And I would be willing to just, key in whatever it is that you wanted me to keep from that as well. So I would make sure that you had permission to do that as well. So
I like that.
So that's kind of a trigger card. And then we'll go ahead and roll for one more play as we kind of get an idea here. Have we had pink yet?
It seemed like we did.
I think we did. Let me roll and see if I can get a gold. There we go.
There we go.
That's nice. Okay, you want to go ahead and take this one?
Sure. Use your sticky notepad to record your answer to the following question or statement. Here it is. Keep learning to keep leading. What steps has your company taken to find, retain, and train good leaders? Discuss what the team has written and 2 new implementations for this idea.
Now, with your succession idea, this might be a real key question that you would want to place and make sure that it was discussed, because there's a good chance that even your team would see things or have ideas that maybe you didn't think of as far as helping to retain and train good leaders. So this is a very powerful question for you to make sure that your team got to see throughout it. But they would just write this on their sticky pad, and then they would come back and we would share around the entire circle what steps the company has taken and what each player thinks might be something to add to that or they should try. And this would be a real gold mine of a question on the recording side of it for when it was answered. So that might be one as a leader you would want to have in your stack as before play, but then we would record it, go to the next player. And so all this time I'm awarding, they're awarding each other. And then if at some point someone just keeps dominating and they just talk out of turn, or that they take a long time when they talk, and this is really usually humorous is really what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
I've never seen it be taken offensively.
That's good.
They do have the ability to award a silent card, and what they're
all right.
3 minutes, and I would just keep a timer for 3 minutes. That person would not be able to share. If it was a group discussion, they would just have to let other people talk, and not interject for a little bit. So. And you don't have very many people that do play it, but occasionally you have someone willing to do it, and it's usually just a humorous moment. But we do go ahead and practice it. It's just a way to let others talk who may not be talking as much. So we would, once the game's finished, we would end it. And then I would make any final notes. Great work today. Then I would end that, and that's going to send, it's going to show you what everyone
Oh, wow.
played and got.
Okay.
Final observations. And then it's going to record everything that I did. And so I'll take that in an email, and I'll actually put it into my report that I do and then send that as a PDF to you as a leader. And that would be the end of the game. We would come back and we would just kind of let you wrap up. I would say, I'm going to let Mike take it from here. I thank you for the opportunity to play the game today. We'll be getting back to Mike with the results and some things that you said that I think would be helpful as you guys talk about succeeding in the future. And thank you all for your time. And I would just close it, and you could say anything you wanted to say, and then we would be finished with the game at that point. So